Hi, everybody. I'm Jim Cox with McCarthy and Cox. We're reaching out today to discuss a little bit more about what's going on, what we're experiencing in the investment world, the volatility specifically. And what I thought I'd do is I'd loop in Wes Bean, our Chief Investment Officer. Most of you, I believe, know Wes, but if for those of you who don't know Wes, Wes is a chartered financial analyst, which is one of the most prestigious awards and designations that you can achieve in our industry. Wes has been with us for a little over 6 years, and before then, for over 12 years with Nationwide. Take it away, Wes.
I'm Wesley Bean, Chief Investment Officer here at McCarthy and Cox. I'm with you today to talk a little bit about the markets. And we all know it's been a rough start to the year. We've seen the stock market sell off. We've even seen the bond market sell off. Um, not by a small degree. The bond market is down. Last time I checked, roughly 8-9% year to date. S&P 500 is 15%, down 15 year to date. Some markets, some stocks are down much more than that. What's a little different about this one is that both sold off together, and also the speed of the correction in the bond market. Normally, you think of bonds as more conservative investments, but to see a move of this magnitude this quickly is rather uncharacteristic. The NASDAQ just had its worst month since 2008, March 2008 to be precise. And anytime I hear anything about 2008, 1999, 2000, 1987, these markets that you kind of think of like this was a really bad time for equities, it gives me pause. I stop. I pay really close attention. That's just something I saw, and it's a little, just reason for pause and caution. We've seen some stocks just get absolutely obliterated when they miss on earnings or revenue or subscriber growth or whatever that number is. Anything that's disappointed the investing public has really punished stock prices. So Netflix, first quarter earnings January, they reported not so good. Stock sold off 25%. Last week or week before last, they reported again. Subscriber growth wasn't where folks wanted to see that, and the stock sold off another 30%. So stocks that are not doing what people are expecting or what they're anticipating are really just getting hammered. Inflation, we've been talking about inflation for some time. We would have liked to have seen inflation pull back a little bit by now and get a little more under control. I would hope the Fed would have got a little bit more out in front of this and reeled it in a little bit. So what they're doing now is they have hiked one time, a quarter of a point, but they've come out and said they're going to have to be much more aggressive with their hiking cycle going forward. So we're going to likely see some half point increases, maybe even some 0.75% increases by the Fed. One thing to remember with a lot of this, though, this year we've seen a lot. We've seen sell-offs in both markets, but over the long term, try to keep the long term in mind. We do things here at McCarthy and Cox to help keep people invested and not try to time the market. So it's time in the market, not timing the market. Over the last 50 years, the stock market has returned an average of 10% per year. Again, over the last 50 years, 10% per year. I don't personally want to step out of the market knowing that that's a longer term number. If I have a goal that I want to get to in 10, 20, 30 years, I want to stay invested. I want those odds on my side. And again, it's easier said than done when we see things like this and sell-offs like this. But if you can stay invested in the market, stay disciplined, don't panic, don't sell, stay invested over the long period, that's your best course of action to reach your long-term goals. All right, so let's just take a step back for a moment, look at the current situation. If we look at the economy, we have a really strong economy here at home. So here domestically in the U.S., the economy is strong. Our growth is slowing, but we still have growth and it's still well above the historical average. So again, GDP, the economy here is strong. Unemployment is down, jobs are abundant. Things are really good. People are spending money, companies are spending money, earnings. So the S&P 500 companies in the first quarter of this year, over 50% of the S&P 500 companies reported, and 81% of those companies beat on earnings. 66% beat on revenue. Both of those are above the 10-year averages. So think about that. 81% of the companies that have reported this quarter earned more, earned more. EPS was higher than people were anticipating. Globally, there are concerns. We have the war in Russia and Ukraine. We have still a zero tolerance sort of policy for COVID in China. And what that means is someone in a factory has COVID or gets COVID, tests positive for COVID, the factory shuts down. And that certainly doesn't help the economy there. And also that's a little bit of a headwind on our economy here because we've seen supply chain shortages. As long as China keeps locking down and we rely on goods from China, that's going to hurt us. So just another little headwind that we need to keep an eye on. Overall, though, again, the economy here anyway, domestically is strong. The global economy is actually still growing. But that said, there are some headwinds. The Federal Reserve has a dual mandate, and that is to maintain full employment and also price stability. The full employment mandate looks pretty good right now. People are working, jobs are abundant. The price stability mandate, not so much so. You felt this when you go to the pumps, when you go to the grocery store, inflation. So that's price stability, and this means keeping inflation under control. As a result of this inflation that we've seen, the Fed has started the next hiking cycle. What are we doing to manage through this current environment? We always say we prepare for times like this, and we do. So to be quite honest, there's not a lot that we're doing differently right now, at least not in a vastly different way. It is reassuring, however, to have a reminder every now and then of what we do to prepare for times like these. So you've likely heard from time to time that don't put all your eggs in one basket. In the investment world, that's called diversification. We don't want to own just U.S. stocks, just international stocks, just small caps, just large caps, just stocks, just bonds. We spread that out. That's diversification. We spread that out because a lot of these assets, when one zigs, the other zags. And by mixing these together or putting these together in an optimal way, you don't see the wild ups and downs that you might see in, say, the energy sector. If we just owned the energy sector this year, it would have been great. But what if we owned just the technology sector? We'd be down 20, 25, 30% this year. So we build portfolios, we put assets together that don't always act the same way. And what that does is just serves to smooth the ride out and make it an easier trek from point A to point B. We also maintain all the time. We maintain a core exposure, core high quality bonds in our portfolio. We maintain a core exposure to bonds all the time, period. These are, think of treasury bonds or investment grade bonds. That is there for two reasons. One is to generate income. Two is diversification and sort of a risk control for the equity portion of your portfolio. Now, the income piece, we've not been able to generate any income off of fixed income for a very long time until recently. A few months ago, as I mentioned, the treasury rates have increased. A lot of them have, in 2 year by 2% this year alone. We've been able to actually go into that part of the market and purchase some of these bonds to provide some yield, to provide some income to your portfolio. So that's a nice offshoot of this. The other thing is when we don't get a yield off of bonds, we still want to hold them. And people often ask why, but the why is it sort of serves as a shock absorber. A lot of times when stock markets go down, the bond market will go up. And again, not always the case. It hasn't been the case this year, but we always want to maintain that core high quality bond exposure as that insurance component or as that shock absorber to the equity portion of your portfolio. Market drops are inevitable, but there's an upside to tax loss harvesting. This only applies to taxable accounts, so this wouldn't work in an IRA account. So really, what you're trying to do here is you're looking for investments that have sold off, right? So you have a loss. you can sell that, you capture or harvest that loss, if you will, and just kind of set that aside. And you would take those proceeds and buy back a similar type investment. So you still have a similar type exposure in your portfolio, but you've harvested or captured a loss and set that over to the side. Let's say over the course of the year, this investment comes back and you sell it at the end of the year and you have a gain. You pull that loss that you set aside, you pull that in and you offset the gain. And the goal is to zero out your tax situation. So zero out your gains so that you don't owe any taxes at the end of the year. And again, that's the goal, but that is one thing where we can take a situation that no one wants, which is a loss, and turn that into something or get something positive out of that.
Thanks, Wes, for that very informative presentation. Thought I'd just add a few more comments. McCarthy and Cox worked primarily with people very close to or in retirement. When somebody is at that age, emotions kind of get amped up a little bit, which is not lost on us and how we manage assets. When the money that's invested represents a lifetime of sacrifice, and also represents that family's ability to support themselves for the rest of their life and not be forced to go back to work, it's natural to get very nervous about how that's managed and how that's going to continue to work for you, and have questions about, how it's going. It's at those times, we use the word turbulence a lot when we're talking about volatility in the investment world. And we do that on purpose. And the main reason we do that is kind of give an analogy of like your retirement is like a flight, that you take where you have an end destination. For the majority of that flight, there might be very little turbulence, no turbulence whatsoever. It might be actually very boring, flight path where, you just keep making progress to your end goal. Every once in a while, there's that turbulence, and sometimes the turbulence is greater, sometimes it's less. But the pilot doesn't make emotional decisions at that point of turbulence, right? You want to stick to the plan. You developed a navigational plan before you took off. You developed a financial plan, a retirement income plan with your advisor. And so, we thought we'd just reach out and just say, hey, if you have any questions about that plan, about, your progress towards that plan, give us a call. There's no reason for you to be, worried or nervous about what's going on. But if you are, that's perfectly natural. So give us a call. Let's schedule a time to have you come in and talk to your advisor, or just do a quick phone call, just to see how things are going. With that, thank you very much for tuning in. And I hope you found this helpful and informative. Take care.